Hey, Between Sundays family. I wanted to front this episode because this episode is a little bit different. We had gotten together on September 10th to record an episode on guns and violence. We met and started recording somewhere around 11:30 a.m. And little did we know, about an hour into this conversation, two very horrible events would take place. The shooting over in Colorado at Evergreen High School would take place. And then also the well-known Charlie Kirk would be assassinated in the middle of a conversation on a college campus. Look, at the heart of this conversation that we were having on this podcast episode, as we're talking about guns and violence and tragedies that happen around the world, we keep coming back to this idea of valuing humans and valuing human life. And we didn't even know any of this was happening. I don't think it's a coincidence that God led us to have this conversation. And look, we weren't scheduled to release this episode for another 4 or 5 weeks. But I hope as you're watching, you understand that God is calling us to learn to value the people that He made in His image. Welcome back to another episode of Between Sundays, the podcast where we have conversations that just simply gotta be had. I've got with me a returning guest, Pastor Mike Hilson, and of course my co-host, Maxine Higgins.
Hey, everybody.
And we have with us a first-timer. We've got Mike Petschk. We've got two mics. We've got Mike Petschk. Mike, I've known you now for 7 years. I've been here for 7 years. You were here when I got here, and you've done a little bit of everything here. What are you doing right now with this ministry?
Thanks for inviting me in, first of all.
Yeah,
I
of
really
course.
appreciate it. So right now with New Life Church, I am the pantry director and the security director here.
Very cool.
And the basic fixer of all things broken.
For real.
Especially toilets.
This guy does literally a little bit of everything.
I need to talk to you about a faucet, by the way, before we leave today.
Sounds good.
Mike's one of those guys where if he can't do it, he always knows somebody who can.
I got a guy.
Oh man, I'm so excited to have you guys on this episode here. We're gonna have a really cool conversation. We're gonna talk about guns. We're going to talk about all the controversy, or at least some of the controversy around guns. We're going to specifically talk about, can Christians have guns? Should Christians have guns? Should Christians be okay with using guns, carrying guns? So guns, let's talk about it. Living between Sundays. All right, so when it comes to guns, I have some mixed feelings, which is why I want to talk about it here. First, let me just say, I grew up, my dad was a country boy. Most of y'all already know that. He grew up in the country where his father and grandfather, they grew up around guns because hunting was a necessity. It wasn't a sport. There were stories of my great-grandfather going into the woods with a pistol and coming out with dinner. I don't know how true that is, but it's just the idea, like they hunted to survive. They farmed to survive. And so my dad grew up around guns. You know, it was back then, it was, you go back in the woods and find a good spot and you shoot your shotguns, your rifles, your whatever. He grew up around them. And so I grew up with a certain knowledge of them. And then when I was about 14 years old, my dad got his concealed carry. And so I sat through the classes there with him, learned gun safety, all that kind of stuff. So I was always comfortable around guns. And funny enough, my dad was also a preacher. He used to call himself the pistol packing preacher. And so, I mean, that should just tell you everything you need to know about him. He was wild. He loved a guy. I oftentimes say he had a Peter spirit about him. You know, he would slice off an ear and apologize for it later and get rebuked and change his ways, but he was a little bit wild. And so I grew up comfortable around guns, understanding guns and whatnot. And as I got older, of course, you see on the news, you see some of the stuff that happens, you see the mass shootings, and you get introduced to the people whose mindset is, if we take guns away, we don't have to worry about this, right? And I've always wrestled back and forth. And where the wrestling really hit was actually just a few years ago. I was doing some ministry work with a group of people not too far from here in Temple Hills. Mm-hmm. And I was going out there about every other week and built really good relationships with these guys. And I realized how much a 30-minute drive can change your world. Mm-hmm. Just the differences in where you live, right? And I'm talking to these guys, and they're young guys, all of them under 20. and they're talking about, this person that got shot, and this person that got shot, and it was a normal occurrence for them.
Yeah.
I'll never forget them coming in, and it was someone that they all knew, so they were all broken up about it. And they were having this conversation about someone who was literally just wrong place, wrong time. It was a mistake. And he's sitting in his car, and someone walks up on the car, offloads pistol through the window, and then runs away. Still hadn't found the guy at the time. I'm sitting there, and I'm wrestling, because I grew up again around guns, comfortable with guns, but also seeing how destructive they can be. And man, a lot of this could be a lot cleaner if people didn't have access to guns. And so you wrestle with this. So I want to bring this conversation here, because we've got a mix of upbringings, a mix of opinions. As Mike, you shared earlier, you're head of the security team here. And so you have to think about these kind of things often. In fact, whenever there's a threat, there's been moments where you'll text me and say, hey, this thing just happened X amount of miles from the church. Just want you to be on alert. I'm going to have the security team on alert. Things like, so you're constantly thinking about all this stuff. Tell me kind of how you grew up around the topic of guns.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, my father had guns. He wasn't a hunter. He just, we had sporting guns, and we would go out a couple times a year and shoot. That was about it growing up, but I was really interested in hunting.
Okay.
And nobody, surprisingly enough, in my immediate family hunted, but I had lots of friends and their families hunted. So maybe around 14, I started hunting with my friends, and it just kind of evolved from there.
Nice. Okay. Pastor Mike.
Okay, now I grew up in the woods of North Carolina, way out in the woods, but guns and hunting were not a big thing. My stepdad had a .22 pistol that I have now. That's the only gun I can think of that was in the house, besides a 12 gauge single shot that is probably 150 years old that I also have now, but have never refurbished.
Okay.
So I need to get that thing refurbished. But those were the only guns we had in the house. Now, interestingly enough, my birth father, on my dad's side, that whole side hunted, and there were guns everywhere with them. But I only went down there a few times. Probably about 14 was the first time I went hunting, and I killed a deer, and they did the whole thing where they put blood on your face and some kind of ritual. It was really weird, but at any rate, that all happened, and but I didn't grow up around guns, and this is gonna be a surprise to everybody sitting here. When Tina and I first got married, there were no guns in our house. And then we had our first child, Robert, and Robert had what I felt at the time was an inordinate interest in guns, which, by the way, he still has today at 33. But I refused to bring a gun into my house because I knew how attracted he was to them.
Wow.
And I was very afraid that I would not be able to keep him away from it. So I didn't have any moral qualm with guns. I didn't have any problem with me having a gun. I felt very safe personally around it. I didn't feel safe with my kids there because I couldn't watch him all the time. So we literally did not get guns in the house until the boys were well into their teens. So so I avoided it for quite a while.
Gotcha.
So now I have about 6 or 7. So but,
Nice. Nice. Maxine.
Okay, so when I was 11, we moved to New York. My mom and my stepfather were going to get married, all that stuff. That was the first time that I knew that there was a gun in our home, because he was NYPD officer, retired now, but and I hated the idea of it. When I tell you, I was terrified that there was a gun in the home. I would have nightmares, and I don't even think they know this because I didn't bother to tell anybody, but I hated knowing that it was there, and my mind was kind of what if they get into an argument and a fight? And part of this had to do with a lot. I really didn't know him very well either, so that doesn't help whatever. But yeah, I hated the idea of having it. I think for most of my life I've been pretty anti-gun. And then we moved out here, and just you're in a different environment, you're in a different space. So we do own guns. I don't love them, but my kind of stance on is if someone crazy has a gun, I want a gun too. That's kind of where I landed, right? Like, if you're going to have a gun, I'm going to have a gun, but I'd rather not have a gun. I'd rather there be no guns ever in existence, but that's not the world we live in. And so I took the classes. I have the stuff. My husband carries all the stuff because this is unfortunately the world that we live in, but I hate them.
Here's the question, or one of many questions. How do we as Christians deal with things like, okay, Jesus says to turn the other cheek, right? That he, as he's teaching, and we get to he's kind of rephrasing, okay, you know eye for eye, but this is what I say, kind of thing. And he gets to turn the other cheek. And if someone asks you for your, someone asks you for your cloak, you give them your shirt as well. And like Jesus kind of, so how do we level this out? How do we balance this with the idea of Christians using guns? If we're supposed to turn the other cheek, if we're supposed to have faith that God's going to protect us.
I'm supposed to turn the other cheek for me. I can't make that choice for my kids. If you come at me, you might look to me on any given day, you might to me just look like a one-way ticket home to Jesus, and I'm good, But if you come at my kids or my wife or my grandkids, I don't turn the cheek for them.
Yeah.
I do that for me. And so I don't think that particular verse, there are other verses that would be applicable, but here I don't think that's applicable if you're just talking about defending your family, defending other people. The way you just described it, if they have a gun, I want to have a gun because, I got kids to take care of. I got grandkids to take care of. I got a wife to take care of. So having said that, I'm not real good at this because even now, my guns are all locked away in a safe because I don't want any chance that any of the kids ever get them. And so for self-protection, my guns are not well placed.
Right.
I would need to say, hold up, I need about 2 minutes, and then I'm going to shoot you.
Right.
Can you stand over there facing the closet while I just get things?
So I'm not real. I need to fix that, but I have not. So.
I also feel like some of that, and this would be better. This is probably, it's definitely better for our theological scholars in the room. How much of that, statements like that in the Bible is more of a metaphorical, like as far as forgiveness and grace, like goes. Yeah. Right.
No, I think that's true.
Yeah. So, because that's how it hits me, not necessarily that practically. Right. And I think there's probably some application to that, but I think it's more spiritually about forgiveness and grace.
Well, people will say Jesus said this, and then it's very clear that he went to his death without saying a word, like a lamb before slaughter. All of that's true. But he did that knowing what he was doing. And let's don't miss the fact that Jesus went to the cross knowing he was going to raise from the grave and punched the devil in the mouth so hard he had no teeth left. You see what I'm saying?
This
so
is true.
there is nothing docile,
right,
or even anti-war about what Jesus dropped the nuclear bomb spiritually,
right.
when he died and rose from the dead. So
I always, when the people suggest talking about, who's the image of a strong man to you, or a manly man, my first point is guess every time is Jesus. There's no more manly man. That perfect balance of compassion and strength and resolve, that's where that hits with me. So and we talked a little about it earlier. I think we have a tendency as human beings to pervert things, and I use pervert to say use as unintended.
Yes.
And we do that a lot as humans. I think that's one of those things where we'll happens all the time. We take a little piece of the Bible and we twist it to suit our agenda, and off we go with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
May I, I'm gonna blow up the conversation for just a minute.
Go for it.
So we all, obviously, there are guns in all of our houses. We all feel this way. I'm the only man sitting here that's probably not carrying a gun at the exact moment right now. So let's be clear about who we are. And so we obviously are comfortable with it. However, John Adams said this at the writing of the U.S. Constitution. He said our Constitution is designed to govern a thoroughly moral and religious people, and it is entirely inadequate for any other. So here's how I want to turn this conversation on its head, because I truly do not have any issue with a true God-fearing Christian who understands the value of other human beings having a gun. But to use a phrase you used, that's not the world we live in.
Yeah.
So I wonder sometimes, because I'm going to make a sentence that'll get you some attention, but it's not popular. No gun has ever killed anybody. It's the human behind the gun,
right,
that does that. And if they don't have a gun, they'll pick up a knife, or they'll use a car. I mean, we've seen all of this, right? But if large portions of our society reject God and therefore see every other human being as nothing in the world but an accident on the face of this planet, and the value of other human beings have dropped, here is the closest thing I can come to for an argument in favor of gun control.
So I agree with that. I agree with what you said about the Constitution originally being built for a country that was founded on the gospel, right? Like, even if they weren't all theologians and pastors, and it was like, this is a general, this is how we want to found our country. Okay, cool. Not the world we live in, right? However, because it's not the world we live in, the whole gun control argument gets a little wonky, because you take guns and you just take them from the people that actually fear the law.
Because the only people that are going to follow the law are the people that are going to follow the law, who aren't going to kill people with the guns that they keep. Because so
I
get that.
I will say, Mike, a conversation you and I had a few years ago that, and I was sharing with you a little bit earlier, that kind of just deepened my view of the balance that's here, when it comes to firearms and whatnot, is we were sitting at the food pantry, and it was during COVID, so people are desperate, times are scarce, and we were talking about concealed carry and whatnot. I was thinking about taking the classes at that time, and you were kind of walking me through your thought process, and I'll never forget, you said, if someone were to come in here right now and want to take all our money, take all the tech that's in the building, and take all the food, whatever, and I really expected that moment for you to say, I'd put them down, like, I'm protecting our property, I'm protecting, and then you said, I'd give it all to them. And you were like, I would take it, whatever you need, I'll help you load it in your car, I think you said. And I was like, and then you said, it would not be until I felt that lives were in danger, that and you began to turn this into, you value the life of the person that's robbing you right now, right? And it just kind of changed the way I viewed things. Share with me a little bit from that point of view, because like I said, you're the head of security.
Yeah. So I think fundamentally, especially if you're going to carry a firearm for self-protection or protection of others, at your core belief system, you have to have that there's nothing more valuable on this planet than a human life.
Amen.
And that includes your own and your family. I'm not leaving them out on that. So I obviously believe firmly in being able to protect yourself. I do not believe in taking someone's life or using any form of lethal threat to protect property. I can't support that.
Right.
But I don't think you should have to sustain any injury to yourself or a loved one at all. Right. So if you have to apply lethal force to prevent that, that to me is a green light to do that. But it should absolutely be the absolute last choice. You should have utilized any and every precautionary measure available to you prior to using lethal force. And that's, there's imminent danger, and there was no other way to avoid it than the use of lethal force. And not only do I feel that morally and spiritually, it's also good for staying out of trouble with the law.
Yeah.
So, which is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, for real. how do you balance that, right? That mindset, that view with the idea of faith in God, right? So something you said, it's my last resort, my last option. What happens to the person that says, well, what if at that moment where you're about to draw your gun, God wants to act, God wants to move? I'll tell you why I said this. Years ago, I was 13, 14. I had a friend of mine, and she swore, her opinion might have changed by now, but she swore she would never harm anybody else for any reason. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, so what happens? Someone breaks into your house in the middle of the night, your children, and she said, I would just have to trust that God would take care of them, right? How do you balance this of, the green light of, I got to protect my family. You said it earlier, I should not have to withstand any injury to me or my loved one's property, take it. But when it comes to someone's life and well-being, that's when I step up, kind of thing. But to the person that says, what if God wants to step up? What if God wants to protect you?
Yeah, by the way, I have actually voiced exactly what you just said. You and I have never had that conversation. It's
Right.
like, if you promise me you won't touch any of the people in my house, you can have everything in my house. I don't.
Yeah.
I'll buy another one.
I
It's
could
not
use a
big
new
deal,
TV.
Huh?
I could use a new TV.
Exactly. Exactly. So at any rate, but let me answer that with a story. And the story is, there's a flood. There's a man on the roof of his house. Tree floats by. The people are on the tree. They say, get on the tree with us. No, God's going to deliver me. Boat goes by. No, God's going to deliver me. Helicopter goes by. No, God's going to deliver. Dude drowns. Gets to heaven and says, I thought you were going to deliver me. He says, I sent a tree, a boat, and a helicopter. Okay, that applies here. Because
sure.
Will God take care of things? Yes. But perhaps God already took care of it before it happened, knowing it's going to happen later, by having you take the classes, figure out which end of the gun works and how to point it right. And perhaps that's how God decided to take care of things. I also heard a phrase once. They said, well, if you shoot somebody, then you value your stuff more than their life. Well, hold up. If you break in my house, I'm not the one valuing my stuff more than your life. You're the one that wants my stuff more than you want to stay alive. So whose side is this on? Because if you're threatening my family, I'm not going to have any other choice. Either one of us is not walking out of here if you're going to threaten my family. And I don't know which one it is, but I'm going to do my best to make sure it's you.
Yeah.
Because I got to protect other people. Now, again, if you walk in the door and you say, I don't want to hurt you, I don't want to hurt anybody, I just want your stuff. You know what? We'll get, which car do you want to take? I'll take the other one. We'll drive away for a little while. So I mean, I just, it's not a big deal.
It's hard though sometimes to tell intention with that too, especially when it's
for sure
a moment of high fear, high anxiety. You don't know how you're going to respond or react in that particular situation, which is why it is tricky. And I personally believe minimum, there have to be some standards in order for you to own a gun. And I understand that not everybody's going to do it. I know people can get stuff illegally. I understand all of that. But at the same time, knowing how to yield it properly is common sense to me. Having things be a little bit more difficult, right? I understand that guns alone don't kill people, but guns have the opportunity in the wrong hands to kill more people than a knife does. And we can't just act like that's not a thing. We know that that's true. Somebody can stab maybe 5 people, and the time someone can gun down, 100, really. And so we have to kind of address those pieces too. But at minimum, there should be some kind of standard for the majority of people to do it. I also feel the same way, honestly, about police officers and military and all of this stuff. That has to be a rigorous process, because the access and the power that you have in those moments, and I understand you're afraid for your life, or you're scared of the kid who's 8 years old. I hear you. I hear it, right? Because you're in those tense situations, you don't know how you're going to react. But that's all the more reason to come back. Why am I doing this? And I've said this from both sides, because my stepfather is NYPD, or was NYPD officer. So I understand the police officer side. But I've also worked in schools in the Bronx, New York City. I worked in a middle school, and this is the thing that jarred me forever. It's burned in my brain, because there was an incident with a girl. So it was a middle school. So I think she was in 6th grade, talking about a 12-year-old girl, smaller than me at the time, right? And she walks in at that particular school because it's one of those schools that's like high security, all the stuff. So the kids, before going in, imagine this, at 12 years old, before going into your school, you have to walk through metal detectors, get wanded down and patted down. That's how your day starts.
Yeah.
That's wild, right? But we don't even, it's so normalized there that it's not even a thing, that they're walking into essentially like a prison, right? Going into school. So this particular day, it was freezing outside. It was raining, and there was some kind of security issue inside the school. So they shut down the line, right? They shut it down. So there's a bunch of kids just waiting to get in the building. This little girl walks in, and she's upset because her hair got wet while she was waiting outside for the thing. So she does have an attitude. She's not saying anything, but she just puts her stuff down heavy on the thing. The police officer took it as aggression. And because, by the way, in New York City public schools, there are police officers during that time. They used to be security officers, but they got rid of that and put in NYPD officers at schools. And he charges this man, 6'3", huge man, charges at this 12-year-old girl, takes her, throws her down on the floor, puts the arm behind the thing, and all I can think is like, my God, thank God he doesn't have a gun on him right now. And I talked to the police afterwards because I was there. I saw the whole thing beginning to end. I wasn't far away. I wasn't even over there. I was right at the receiving line. What happened? Oh, you got to put down these people. What are you talking about? A 12-year-old girl had an attitude because her hair is wet.
Yeah.
And you are saying you're fearful for your life right there? There's something wrong with that person. They should not be in schools.
Agreed.
He should not have a gun. Thank God he didn't at that time. A few years later, they passed a law that those NYPD officers could carry guns into schools. That's horrific.
On the flip side, though, if there had been the same officer and he had a gun, there'd have been a whole lot of kids that are still alive.
Yes, but the training is, I think, that makes a difference. And if they have the kind of what you were saying, if they have that, to me, anyone who's working with children has to have the life of the child in mind, right?
For sure.
That has to be first. But that person, in that particular case, they were trained for the streets. They weren't trained to be in schools.
That's right.
So it's completely different. And like, I think sometimes we I don't know that we properly evaluate the problem, and then we just put any kind of solution on it. And sometimes the solution makes it worse. And I think sometimes that's what we see with like the gun language that we use. In like, we don't want any gun control because it's going to restrict the right of this person, blah, blah. But some gun control could be smart.
Well, actually, there is a lot of gun control, though. There are a tremendous number of laws on the books. The only time my house has ever been robbed was 1 month after I bought my first gun in Maryland, and it got registered, and that gun is what they went for.
Wow.
Somebody knew I bought the gun because they found out, came to the house.
That's an inside job
everything
for sure.
up. Yes, tore everything up to get to the gun.
Yeah, that's an inside job. But to go back a little bit in this conversation, if you go back to when Mike was talking about somebody breaking into the house, most normal people can't put their minds into the mindset of a burglar, if you will. But if you would try, if you were a burglar and you were going to rob people's homes, how would you go about doing it? Well, I can tell you that the ones that are good would watch your home and see when you come and you go. And then when they were pretty sure nobody was home, they would go inside, they would have the place to themselves, and they would take what they wanted and leave. So with that knowledge, if somebody comes into your home and you're there, it is reasonable to believe that they may not be there just for your stuff.
Right.
Fair, right?
Yeah.
So now that doesn't, in my mind, or the law's mind for that matter, give you a green light to just start spraying, right? So some more things have to happen. But you're building an index of suspicion on top, these cards on top of each other, right? And then, so that is where you go, like my radar is up. If they're coming in my home uninvited and they've made I'm there, I'm going to assume they're there to do harm to me or my family until proven otherwise.
Right.
And again, that doesn't mean I'm just going to start spraying bullets everywhere, right? If I catch them walking out with my TV, as long as they're walking out, they can continue to walk out. I'm calling 911. I'm going to get a good description, see what they're wearing. Maybe they have some scars, tattoos, right? What color are their eyes? Anything I can get
Mhm.
to aid the police with recovering my TV. But I'm not going to shoot them. Now, if they have other intentions, then there's going to be a confrontation.
See, it's obvious right now you're talking from training and conditioning,
Right.
100%.
Which is,
100%.
I think, what we're all getting at is what's missing.
Yes.
Right.
It's this idea. I mean, take even aside from guns, right? You can misuse the word of God,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There are pastors
Oh, yeah.
all day long that will take something that
Yes.
is good and they will weaponize it. And the problem is lack of training, lack of understanding, or just the heart isn't right. Same thing with guns, right? I believe Christians should be able to have guns, have access to guns, should be able to feel comfortable carrying them. However, if you have a gun, if you carry a gun, it's your responsibility to know that weapon and to know
Yes.
how to use it.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's what we're missing, because my dad used to say it this way. We've said it here already, but the more good people you have carrying weapons, the safer you actually are.
Right.
Right. When my dad went through his class and I sat in with him, that's one of the things that the guy said. He said, if you find yourself in a public setting and you're one of the good guys with a weapon, then you're going to be aiding the situation. You look at some of the countries over in the Middle East where people are carrying around AK-47s and whatnot. Not saying I want to be like the Middle East, but if I'm an outsider, I have ill intent, I'm less likely to run up on somebody who's carrying an AK-47 who could defend themselves well. I'm not saying we should start carrying around AK-47s, but I'm saying the more good guys you have with guns, the better it should be. However, those good guys with guns should have the training and conditioning to know how to.
Not just the
absolutely.
training and conditioning. You've got to scenario yourself. You've got to work it out in your mind. For instance,
Absolutely.
I know how to use a gun. I know how to defend myself. I know what I'm doing, right? I'm not at all, and I've thought about this many times. I've scenarioed this out because as a senior pastor, somebody walks in the church, somebody we've thought through all this. Mike and I have had these conversations, so I'm not certain what I would actually do if holding a gun and a human being is standing in front of me, even if that human being is a threat. I'm not exactly certain I could pull the trigger. And so I've scenarioed this out in my mind. Best case scenario for me is an empty slide pump action shotgun. And as soon as I know they're out there, I just want to hear them. I just want them to hear me go.
That usually does it, by the way.
Usually they'll leave at that point.
It's an attention getter for sure.
That's probably best case scenario for me because I'm not certain. Now, if my grandkids are here, you all know I'm just absolutely over the moon for my grandkids. And if my grandkids are here, my wife is here, any of them, I think the world changes at that point.
Yeah.
But if it's me and another human being, I'm not really sure that I would be able to.
Yeah.
So you have to not just have the training, you have to have worked these scenarios out in your mind. I know how I will react if a gun walks into the church and I'm up front preaching. I have worked that scenario in my mind. I know how I'll react. Our safety team knows how they will react. So I know what's going to happen because I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do if it's just me and another person and I have a gun and I don't know what would happen there.
I hate it.
Yeah,
I hate even thinking about it. This is the thing. Like I hear when people are like, it's just, it's who uses it and all this stuff. But I don't think that guns are neutral. Like I don't, because you have to think about the intention of why something was created and whether it was to take the life of an animal or a human being, however you want to say it. I don't know who created the first gun. Do you? I feel like you know a lot of stuff like this. I don't know who created the first gun.
I know gunpowder was made in China.
Or like why, right?
Yeah.
But the creation of the gun is a result of our fallen world, period. Like, I don't think there's any way that anyone can try to convince me that guns are neutral or for fun. If it has a power to take a life, it is mostly negative. Although, yes, it can be used to protect. But if we were living in a world that we didn't need that, I think it would be better.
But a lot of things fall into that category.
And I'll put all of them in there.
So, so certain tools that have the power to take a life are the result of the fall.
So I will say this: a tool that can be used, but that's not the intention of why it was created, to me is different, right? Like a hammer.
But I'm not. I don't know the answer to this. So I'm going to say I don't know the answer to who created the first gun. I don't know the answer. But the biggest use of guns outside of war is not against human beings. It was for food.
Mm-hmm.
And so go back to pioneer days, they would keep the guns, not so much for other humans, but they had to go shoot something to drag it home and feed their kids. So there is a positive use, and I would argue even today, the vast majority of the use in North America anyway, of uses of guns are very positive in the sense that they're hunting, there's sport shooting, there's all this going on. Now I'm not trying to overlook the fact that 57 people were shot over Labor Day weekend in Chicago. I'm not trying to overlook that.
Yeah.
I just think that,
For me, though, if someone were to ask me, like, and I know that everybody doesn't have to fall into this category, that's fine. But I'm saying personally for me, if someone were to come to me and say, hey, you could have no one die from gun violence ever again, or you have to give up hunting. I'm giving up hunting every time. Right?
Well, but here's the problem. You're not I'm sorry.
I'm
about to go wildlife management on you because you're not considering the fact that then all the wildlife overpopulates. Then there's disease in the forest that comes back into the city.
No, but I am considering you could poison animals. There's fumigation. There's a lot of other ways to get rid of things.
So here's what I want to get at though.
I do not care about PETA.
Here's what I want to get at though. Okay, say you did get that choice. Max and God having a conversation face to face, and God says, give up hunting and, figure out what to do with the overpopulation, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, no one ever dies from gun violence again. Yeah. Okay, great. But Cain killed Abel with
a rock.
Yes, but
right?
Cain killed Abel. Cain did not kill Abel and 45 other school children with that rock or whatever he killed them with, right?
Yeah, but Samson killed 100 men with the jawbone of an ass.
Yeah, and then it was Samson, not the difference between Samson doing that in an instance versus a 19-year-old kid who has no friends and is socially awkward and doesn't have the medication he needs and blah, 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 getting the gun from his dad and then going into a school and doing this over and over and over and over and over and over in this country is different.
I assume by the same logic you would get rid of a bomb.
Bombs? Yeah, honestly, listen to me. If you're going to ask me every time, would I rather have a world that did not have violence? Yes,
but that world has never existed.
People.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I know that it doesn't exist, so that's not my choice, which is why I own a gun. But if you were to ask me if it's a either or, if I have to just give up these things here to protect this, then yes, I'm going to do that. But we don't live in that world, which is why I own a gun, which is why I know how to shoot a gun, which is why I know how to do the things, and I'm going to do what I need to do.
Can I be honest? Of everybody here, if I'm trying to attack and you're protecting your daughters, I probably fear you more than them.
You feel, because here's the thing,
I'm the closest to your side of this argument.
I've had this conversation with Theo before. Like, I will stab you. I will close contact. I don't mind that.
100%.
I'm not afraid. This is not what I'm.
I've
not
seen
what we're
you
talking
protect
about.
your daughters.
The last thing you want is to be looking at the business end of a firearm held by a woman. That's for sure. She will shoot you.
Yes.
But let me ask you this, Max. Would you give up freedom and liberty to get rid of guns? Because that's why we have a Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is there to protect us from tyrannical government. Yep. And let's be fair, history shows that if we don't have a way to protect ourselves from tyrannical governments, they will rise.
Yep.
So the question is, would you give up freedom and liberty in exchange for no guns?
So in my scenario here, right? Because I need y'all to understand my scenario here, which is that there would be no violence. And to me, a tyrannical government is violence.
So
there are unicorns involved in this story.
Yes. Yes, there are.
So no, in that case, no. And I understand that we don't live in that. That's what I'm saying. There's in no realm am I like, this is going to work to eradicate all. Like, I don't think that. But do I think that when God was creating the Garden of Eden, he's like, yeah, and then war? No, like the killing of the animal happened because we chose sin, and that's what entered in here. So I don't think it's the way that he wanted forever for everybody to have to even fear their governments, right? That's not even a perfect world either. So that's all I'm saying. Like, I don't, but I know that that's not where we are. So we have to operate with how we are. And with that, then I think we need training, we need discussion, we need some laws, we need to, if we're saying that there's a problem, if we're saying in this country that the problem is not guns and it's mental health, but then we're defunding mental health, that's a problem.
Well, but okay, again, I'm as close to your side of this argument as anybody here, I think, because I'm not certain we are that moral and religious society that the Constitution was written for. I'm not sure we are that anymore. However, there are laws. The problem is not the law-abiding people who have guns. The problem is the people who aren't going to follow the law anyway, and they're not going to get training. Look, if you pick up a gun and you hold it sideways like this,
It's going to go.
100% you're not trained. 100%. And yet that's what we celebrate in our movies. We that's what we show in videos. We show all this, and on to Mike's point, and the point is well taken. I remember President Biden one time saying, "You think your gun's going to protect you from the government? You need F-16s for that." No, you don't, because you're not sending an F-16 into the woods at my house. And if you try to take over the U.S., there's going to be a gun behind every door. That makes us uncontrollable. And that's important.
100% it is.
You know, that's very important. No tyrant is going to believe they can control us. It also makes us uncontrollable when you have sinful people who are going to do sinful things in sinful places. It also makes that uncontrollable. And I'm with you. I remember, I'm old enough. You and I maybe are going to be the same in this. I remember the first time I ever had to actually think about a person with a gun walking into the church and opening fire. Because until I was in my 30s or almost 40, I never gave that thought. It was on 9/11 that I suddenly had to ask myself and start noticing every day, how close are the cars to the church? Is there a box truck anywhere? I remember one Sunday, I don't remember if you were in charge or somebody else was. Somebody came and they were moving. And they parked a box truck up next to the side of the church behind the stage. And I remember saying, find out who that belongs to and get it moved. That cannot be there. And I don't like the fact that I have to think that way. But I don't have a choice. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun and better aim.
And I do think that we have to, and I don't know what it is because I think we haven't spent enough time figuring it out, but I think there has to be some kind of solution where we can do a better job, though, of protecting our children. And we haven't found a way to do that. We haven't found a way to do that in our schools yet. It is ridiculous that the first day of school, like, that's a worry that parents have to have.
Let me say one other thing. You mentioned defunding mental health. And again, I'm going to say something very controversial here, but it goes back to a conversation we were having before we started. Because the same people that are arguing for more gun laws, get rid of all guns, are arguing against the institutionalization of the mentally insane. Okay, you understand the problem here. If there's not an institution you can put somebody in before they commit a crime because they're insane, then they're going to commit a crime and they're going to end up in jail, which is not helping their insanity. It's making it worse. Or they're going to end up in the woods. And how many? 3 that we know of here that came to church here that we helped, but they were homeless and mentally unstable. They just couldn't hold down jobs, or you could say they said they lived in the woods, and they were hit by cars. So we treat them like they're deer, so they get run over by cars. These jacks needed to be in a program, in an institution somewhere. And yet he ends up dead on Old Washington Road because a car hit him.
It's a perfect example.
Yes, you see, and so I understand the fear of warehousing the mentally ill, but at the same time, if you're not going to do anything for them, that is violence as well. So, and that's not a matter of defunding. That's a matter of the people that get the funding don't want to do the right thing. So I'm sorry.
I agree with all that. And circle back on a couple other points that you made in regard. Mike actually touched on it. The amount of guns in America is also a reason why, in my opinion, and a lot of others, we've never been invaded by a foreign by a foreign enemy, and probably never will be, because we have the largest army in the good old American redneck and everybody else that's got guns that you'll ever see. And I think that actually plays a role in why we've never been invaded as a country from an enemy country. The other thing that we've talked about a lot, you talked a lot about the schools, and that's to me, this is a simpler thing than I think people make it out as. And that is, if you have a child that accesses a firearm and they did not pry open a locked device to get to that firearm, there should be severe consequences for that. And I'm a guy that has a lot of them.
Yeah.
Right. But with great power comes great responsibility.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Right. And lethal force is great power.
If you let your 12-year-old get hold of your gun and carry it out of your house, you're responsible for what happens to that gun.
And
Somebody
should,
needs to say that.
Yeah.
And
Even
it
if nothing
should
I think they're
be
starting to do that in
even if
some
nothing happens,
states.
yes.
even if
It's
nothing, it
happening.
should be a severe consequence.
Yeah.
Right. Like we have some good gun laws that have teeth. They don't push them. They don't use them. We don't need any new gun laws. We just need to enforce the ones we have, and enforce them with some teeth that make it count.
I agree.
So, and gun control to me is hitting what you shoot at. That's gun control, because I don't trust the people that dictate the gun control. Right. So because again, as we spoke about people using things as they're not intended, that's what happens. We had, remember the Las Vegas shooting where we had these bump stock. The guy had something called a bump stock trigger. So the stock is spring actuated. So as you fire the gun, the stock will bounce back and forth like a shock absorber, causing your finger to come off and on the trigger extremely quickly. So it's basically firing almost like an automatic weapon, right? So there was a big outcry about, oh, we need to get rid of bump stocks. And we did, right? That got passed. Well, some people came against that, saying, no, you guys can't touch these bump stocks. Well, the reason why they came against it is not because they thought there was a problem with bump stocks. It's because they won't stop there. Right. And that's why you see such a wall in gun lobbyists trying to prevent even what seemingly is a regulation everybody, even avid gun owners, will agree with, because they won't stop there. Right.
Yeah, I think I struggle with like painting, and we've talked in other things about this, but painting any one group with like as a monolith, right? So even within gun lobbyists, are there some people that are genuinely concerned about, our country and the freedom of our country? Absolutely. Are there people that like power? Yeah, and I think that that's also mixed up in there. And so I think here's my, here we go. Okay. Here's my like little thing. I think as a Christian, right, the use of guns and that we need guns, and the idea of having to think about another country invading us, or I'm the bad guy, I think that should break our hearts. And I feel like that's not the attitude that we have towards it. I think the attitude that we have right now very much is a pride in like gun ownership, a pride that, I can, we have the signs outside, if you come in, I'm going to kill, I'm going to whatever it is. I can't think of it right now, but there's a pride among gun use. And I think like, I feel like if we have to use guns, it should hurt us. It should be like, can't believe the world is the way the world is, that I have to carry a gun.
But I exist on both sides of what you just said.
Yeah.
Me as well.
It breaks my heart that it's like this, but at the same time, I believe there's a pride in the freedom to say, I'm gonna buy a gun, and I'm gonna go out. We're about to buy we're about to move on to a compound with my son, right? So I've looked back there. I think there's enough deer back there to keep us alive for a year, so I'm going to put food in a freezer with my gun.
Please don't cook me deer when I come over.
I will not tell you about it if I do. But I mean, you see what I'm saying? I mean, so I'm on both sides of that argument. And I'm not the biggest rah-rah gun guy, right? And I'm not the biggest hunter, by the way. We hunted a whole weekend one time. And at the end of the weekend, last few hours, a deer comes up 20 yards in front of me, broadside, and stops. And I got the gun on him. And I just didn't want to shoot it. So I didn't. I'm not a great hunter, but
that's also freedom.
But I know what I'm doing. I just don't, new laws aren't going to be helpful. Yeah. We need new hearts.
Mm-hmm.
That. And I think that's kind of more what bothers me when I can't see the heart of the Christian shouting behind their gun, right? And the protection of their gun and their need. And I do see that. Are there people who are more the way that you two are sitting? Yes, but you guys are not the loudest, right? The loudest is what gets the most attention. Yeah. The loudest is what's representative of us.
You're exactly right about that. Yeah. And, there's a saying, a armed society is a polite society. Mm-hmm. And what that means is, even for myself, if there's a road rage incident on the road where I've been cut off, or somebody cuts me off, or I cut them off, whatever, like, I am removing myself from confrontation at all costs. Right. Because, as I tell all my friends that carry, every confrontation you're in, there's at least one gun involved because you brought it.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're going to carry a gun, that has to be a reality to you. Yeah. Right. And you need to move away from confrontation at all cost.
Yeah.
Even if you're overwhelmingly right, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's not worth it.
That's why I hear too. I remember moving here, and you know how everybody kind of like waves as they like drive by in your neighborhood and like whatever. It's like, oh, everybody's so nice. My husband was like, nah, they're not nice. They're just like, don't shoot me. Like, everybody's like, so everybody, I'm cool. I'm saying hi. Like, everybody's got a gun, so you got to make sure that you're.
There are like 3 houses in my neighborhood, so we're actually waving.
But again, an armed society is a polite society, right? So there are people that will, absolutely what you're saying. Well, I hope that guy does ... because I'm gonna shoot him full of lead, or whatever phrasing you want to apply to that. That's an irresponsible.
The source of waving and handshakes, right? Was proving you weren't armed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Direct.
Yeah.
That's proof. You take the hand that you use with the weapon, and you wave. Mm-hmm. That's just proving you're not. You shake hands to prove you're not armed. That's the birthplace of that. Mm-hmm. And so
I keep people on their toes because I go left. I'm a righty, so I'm going to be like, hey.
Well, there are other social norms that say you shouldn't shake hands with your left hand, but that's a different episode.
Well, I don't
too.
shake with my left, but I do wave with my left.
But I'm sorry.
I know that one too. I'm just going to go over it. I'm sitting with all men here.
Back to defending the nation. Are you guys old enough to have ever watched the movie Red Dawn?
Is it a war
I've
movie?
heard of it, never watched it.
It's not really a war movie.
Okay.
But that would be 100% real. If not anybody ever tried to invade the U.S., Red Dawn would be Hollywood mimicking real life. Now I gotta watch it.
I've seen the advertisements. Not even advertisements. The cover.
Watch the old one with Patrick Swayze in it.
Okay. Right? Yeah, you gotta watch the original one.
Now, question for the pastor. All right. Had someone maybe about a year ago just kind of drop this verse out there and was like, what do you think about it as it pertains to firearms and guns? Okay. So in Luke chapter 22, this is the Last Supper. Jesus is sitting down with the disciples, and he just gets done talking to Peter, saying, you're going to deny me. And Peter tells him, I'll go anywhere you go, and I'm with you to the end. And Jesus says in verse 34, I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. Or you would deny that you know me 3 times. And then in verse 35, then Jesus asked them. So he turns to the disciples and he says, when I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack anything? Nothing, they answered. He said to them, but now, if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one, right? And so the person who dropped this verse on me was like, okay, so in one moment, Jesus is telling them, peace, 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 and then in other moments, he says things like this. He says things like, I'm sending you out as sheep among wolves. And so the question here, is this a metaphorical, I'm just preparing you, specifically here, go buy a sword, right? I'm preparing you mentally for what's about to come, persecution, all that? Or is he literally telling them, go buy a sword and be prepared to protect your physical bodies?
Go.
I was going to say, and this goes on because we see that all of the apostles end up dying horrific deaths. So if they had a sword, they didn't use it, right? So what does this mean here?
Okay, first of all, let me come against the idea it has to be either or.
Okay.
I don't think it has to be either or. I think Jesus is foreshadowing the fact that the church for the next 400 years, in its birth, the next 400 years, the church is going to be persecuted. Diocletian is the worst of the emperors that do it, but the Nero does it. You get Caligula does it. All of these Roman emperors do it, but then you go all the way back. The Jewish people are doing it to start with, and so the church is going to be. They're going to need a sword if any of them are going to survive. And so I think there's a literal. Jesus is saying, get ready to defend yourself. It's about to get ugly. And I think he's saying that. I also think there is something a bit metaphorical about it in the sense that you hear Jesus say in other places, I didn't come to bring peace. I come to bring conflict, because what we are facing is a battle between the God of heaven and all of the spiritual forces that are around us that desire to keep us from the God of heaven.
Yeah.
And so this battle is sometimes very literal, very physical, very bloody, but we have to understand the source of it. The enemy is not going to give up easily.
Right.
And if you look back, I've been doing a lot of reading of this recently, but even folks who are advocates of paganism, and I don't mean paganism, devil worship, I mean paganism, anything that's not Christian, even they use the phrase, the God of Christianity put down all the other gods. Because the God of Christianity is the original God of Judaism, which is the original God of Islam. These three monotheistic religions pretty much in almost the entire world, not the whole world, but almost the entire world, put down every other god. Now there's one book arguing for the return of the gods and now that we're leaving Christianity, these gods are coming back, and this battle is going to be very, very real, and it's going to be, it was bloody, it still is bloody in places in the world, and it will become bloody even in the Christianized portion of the world if we allow the old gods to come back too much. Because in the end, the challenge is, again, I said we don't need new laws, we need new hearts. The challenge, the fight, the battle, the war is a spiritual one.
Yeah.
And wherever the spirit of, I don't think there's value in another human being has taken over, there will be bloodshed, there will be shootings, stabbings, cars running through crowds. All of those things are going to happen because humans don't value humans.
Yeah.
And only believing that human is made in the image of a God that loves you and that you were made in the image of, knowing that is the only thing that's going to let it work. Again, back to John Adams, brilliant guy. Is our Constitution set up to govern who we are now?
Yeah.
And I hope and pray, and as an American choose to believe that it is, that we are still a predominantly moral and religious people. But if we ever lose that.
Yeah. Now we got to touch on this really quickly because of something that I said. I mentioned all the apostles dying horrific deaths and whatnot.
Except John,
yeah. There is a difference between dying a martyr for the faith and for lack of a better term, bleeding out in a gutter from someone that mugged you, right? So can you touch on that for just a little bit? The difference between for your faith's sake versus...
I think that the church grows fastest on the blood of the martyrs. That's an old phrase within Christianity, and it's true. And especially those original apostles and Jesus himself, there was not a warlike presence to them. What we don't know is the people that followed them. There had to be thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then millions of people following them who did defend themselves. Did James? No, but James was taken by an entire government. Did Peter? No, but Peter was taken by a government. Did Paul? No, but Paul was taken by a government. And so the idea, would they have defended themselves against an individual? Probably yes. But when the Roman government comes and gets you, there's no option here. But as they died for the faith, everybody saw their faith and saw their courage and saw their strength, and they began to follow us. It's like what Mike said earlier. When you say, what is the best image of a real man, a man's man?
Yeah.
Jesus, Paul, Peter. These are men who stood up, and it's not just men. There are women that went through this as well and showed that kind of courage, that kind of strength. That's where the church grew. I don't believe there's any sense that says that we should not defend ourselves one-on-one or defend our families.
Yeah.
I don't think the Bible says that at all. I think the Bible actually says be prepared because tough days are coming. Yeah. And I think you get that not just this verse from Jesus. Go all the way to Revelation. Revelation is very clear. Rough days are coming, and there will be battle and there will be war. And in the end, God will win. Yeah. But that doesn't mean we don't have to fight along the way.
Yeah. There's also the passage where Peter slices off the ear of the guard, right? The temple guard, and he's rebuked by Jesus, right? In my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, in my mind is this difference between we don't need a posse of Christians running out with guns trying to start a 2025 crusade for Christ, right? Like that's not what this is about. Right. You don't get to shoot someone in the name of Jesus, right? That's not how that works. But there is a difference between, as you said, defending yourself, defending your family, versus misusing
and defending other innocent people,
right?
Like our safety team would have to do if it came to that,
right? Yeah. And I think that passage where it says, he says, sell your cloak and get a sword. In my simple brain, basically that said to me, not everybody's going to be happy to see you. It's kind of like what I took out of that. And another thing too, like Pastor Mike has mentioned John Adams. The founding fathers of our country were smart men, but most of them were just farmers. Yeah. They aren't this is just my opinion. I'm not putting this on anybody. This is my opinion. They aren't as smart as the product they made. It is for that reason, in my opinion, those were anointed men. That's what I believe. Yeah.
Jefferson and Franklin probably were smart enough to be able to do that, but a lot of them were farmers, and they were warriors because farmers were warriors.
They had to be, right?
Had to do both.
They had to be.
And so, but some of them were educators, but they, regardless, even taking Jefferson, Franklin, even taking all of them, you're not wrong. They were not as smart as the product they produced. Yeah. Look at it. The balance is amazing.
The greatest place on the planet.
I'm also thinking, like when you were mentioning just the difference between Jesus saying one thing here and then another thing here is just timing. It kind of reminds me of when the Pharisees are trying to catch Jesus and they're asking him about fasting, like, why don't your disciples fast? And he's like, there's gonna be a time for that, but right now the bridegroom is among them, so they don't need that. And I think I look at that as well, as well. Like there's a time where they are going to need to defend themselves, but that wasn't the time then. The time then was to go and spread the message.
Yeah. Let me say something. Buy a sword. This came to mind, so let me say it. The best guarantee of never having to use a sword is visibly wearing one. The best guarantee of never having to actually use a gun is probably visibly wearing one. Because everybody's going to look at you and go, okay, no. Even somebody that's wearing a gun is going to look at you and say, I see that, you see what I've got. And an armed society is a polite society because all of a sudden, I don't want, see what I'm saying?
Don't want to get into it.
Yeah. And you don't want any of that smoke.
Yeah. You know again,
assuming the mental health is
assuming the mental health is there, yes.
Yeah. And to your point on mental health, I couldn't agree with you more. Like we have more and more mental health, and I work in the when I'm working in the pantry, I get an opportunity to see folks that are struggling, and I can tell you that the mental health situation is an absolute crisis, and we keep going the other direction.
Right.
So there is it's, and you can see it. I know COVID had a we had a big push of mental health problems with COVID and what that did to people. I can tell you that my daughter was in high school at the time during COVID, and I saw what it did to her and her friends. And there was a point in time when I actually sat down with her and some of her friends, and I said, listen, we know what COVID did to you. We get it, right? We just need you to get over it as a country, because we need you.
Right.
You are our next leaders, right? And it's not saying that something horrific didn't happen to you. It did.
Yeah.
No question about it.
But do what you got to do to.
We need you to get over it, because we physically need you.
Yeah.
And that's really the only thing I could tell them.
Let
And,
me just say,
and there's plenty of generations before them that suffered world wars, right? The Great Depression, and those people had to get past it, right? They just had to, and that was the message I wanted to give them.
Let me tag on to that real quick. Get over it means do what you got to do to move forward.
Yes.
If whatever trauma you suffered or whatever means you need to go to therapy, you need to do that.
Yes,
fine,
yes,
fine.
absolutely.
Do what you got to do to get over it, because
we need you. We need you. Yeah.
Well, it's this, and then it's also the sort of isolation that happened during COVID. It probably heightened things. But when I look coming back, and I'm not speaking of just school shooters or mass shooters, because I know that is an epidemic, but just in general, I'm thinking about this. The part that isolation almost always plays in all of these stories across the board.
Yeah.
There's no one to, they're not connected with their parents. They don't have a community. They're just playing a video game all day, or, on Reddit threads all day long, and not having any real world, connection. Even for myself, I remember, I tend to keep the news sort of at bay. I get it when I can, but I'm not having it on 24/7. It makes me go crazy. Right before we started filming here, I made the mistake of checking something because I had to upload a TikTok video or whatever, and I saw this horrific story, and now I'm messed up, right? It's just playing in my head. But can you imagine someone whose whole world is just that loop of media, of blah, 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 of all this stuff. And then you start to think that the entire world is like that, and it makes you cagey. It does. If in my mind, all I'm watching is Fox News, CNN, or whatever's not happening on my Instagram or my threads 24, it makes you think that everybody in the world has absolutely lost their mind. And then you go out and you actually go into community, you go on vacation, you go meet people, and you're like, oh, there's still decent people out.
Tons of them. Tons of them. Great people.
Yeah, I worry more. I think one of my biggest concerns for society at large right now is A, they need Jesus. Let's go there. But B is those kids are sitting at home, and young adults, they are sitting at home and they're watching TV, or they're playing violent video games, or they're doing whatever, and then they're popping pills to keep them awake and put them asleep and make them feel better and deal with their anxiety and all. And we have no idea. I mean, I don't even think doctors know the combined effect of all these different medications inside of one human. And the last few mass shooters, if you look at the last few mass shooters, they all have one thing in common. They're taking some serious medications that alter them chemically, that alter their some of them are on puberty blockers, or some of the recent ones been transitioning. And you can't tell me that to try to transition from hormones that are supposed to make you male to hormones that are supposed to make you female doesn't affect your mind. Right. How would you even think that? Puberty alone makes you crazy. Now we're going to try to reverse it. And so I'm not picking on transgender or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the over-medication of people, I think, is making our mental health issue in the country worse instead of better. And I just think I hope, okay, I'm going to say something, and I'm going to tell you right now, I pray and I hope I'm wrong. I think this is going to get way worse. And it's going to happen more because we are medicating people to the point of insanity. So I hope I'm wrong.
And to his point, as an alert instructor, I teach response to active shooter with the alert program. And right now, if everybody wants a profile of an active, everybody knows active shooter, where it's actually active threat, because it don't necessarily have to be a gun. It could be, a knife, a baseball bat, whatever. Gun's the one that we most readily know. It seems to do the most damage, right? Especially in our country. But the profile globally is male.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Not to say that there aren't plenty of females. There are. If you were to look it up, I had no idea there's this many females that have done a mass killing in the globe, but they're there. But still, the only standout profile is male. I'm going to suggest to you that soon that will change.
Mm-hmm.
And just what you're talking about is going to start to become more and more to the surface as they begin to find out these people were on these psychotropic drugs. And, and a lot of it is just like Pastor Mike is suggesting, it's just thrown at these people. There's no support system. There's no mechanism to keep up with them or anything. The healthcare system at large is overwhelmed. The mental healthcare system's even worse. So, it's a big problem.
How messed up does your mind have to be? Let's just go to Minneapolis for a moment. How messed up does your mind have to be to fire through the stained glass windows of a church into a space that is filled with elementary school kids?
Yeah.
No, that there's nowhere inside the human mind for that to compute.
No, there's not. And
yet we just saw that happen.
We did. And that's why one of those hard realities is you have to accept is that in that moment, in that time, that person has lost a human connection completely.
100%.
And there's no talking to them. There's no begging. There's no anything that's going to stop that, because that connection mentally is gone for some reason. I don't pretend to know why. I just know that it is, and there's only really one way these things stop, and that's when somebody intervenes.
Yeah.
In the end, if I could sum up pretty much what you've said, I think it's true that we all wish that guns in this category, were not necessary. I think everybody wishes that weapons were not necessary. However, I also think that it is imperative for the defense of the nation, for the defense of individuals, that weapons, including guns, remain part of our repertoire and one of the tools we can use to protect and save and help. And anybody that's misusing them should be taken away. Anyway, and there are laws on the books already that say that.
Yeah.
If you've been convicted of a felony, you should not be able to get a gun. If you have a mental condition, you should not be able to get a gun. All these laws need to be in place and need to be enforced.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think the freedom to have one gives security to us as individuals and puts enough fear in anyone that would want to invade our country that they're never going to do it.
Yeah.
So, as we land this plane, should Christians have guns? Are they allowed to have guns? Should they be prepared to use them? All this kind of stuff. If you had to answer some of these questions, if there was someone watching that says, I'm trying to figure out, am I allowed? Should I be able to? And if I am, what should I be doing? If you had to answer that question in 20 to 30 seconds, resources, I'm sure you're subscribed to different people online. You might get some magazines, whatever. If you had to give them some resources to answer some of those questions, we've answered some of them here today, but if they're trying to go back and forth as to should I have a gun in my house? What should I do? How would you answer that?
I'll take your 3 words and use them in both directions. You should only have a gun. You should only be allowed to have a gun if you're trained to use it. If you're trained to use it, allowance should not even be a question, and you should have it. If you're trained and you are willing to care about other human beings, then I think arming yourself is not only wise, I think it's part of your responsibility.
Mike?
Yeah, I agree almost wholly on what Pastor Mike is saying. I think as far as Christians, we are a free society in Christianity. And I believe that it is a God-given right to protect yourself. And I think the Second Amendment does not give you the right to protect yourself. It just ensures that that right will not be infringed upon. The government doesn't give us our rights. Those rights are given by the Creator, in my opinion. So for that reason, I would say, just as a blanket statement, if you want one and you haven't been caught running naked through the grocery store and you're not guilty of domestic violence or any violent felony, you should be allowed to have a gun.
Can I tell you what good people with guns ought to make sure never happens again? We should never let them shut us down like they do with COVID.
Amen.
That should never happen again.
Amen, Pastor Mike.
And I do not believe the government has the authority to look at me as a pastor and say, you can't hold church. I only did it out of respect, what they were asking. And in the end, now, I wish I had not. So I'm just going to go on record saying our government should fear us enough to never try that crap again.
If you had to ask me, I would say the question to ask would be, and we've already said it here, how valuable is someone else's life to me? Because like I said, it was that conversation I had with you. And like I said, I grew up around guns, and my dad was very much the same way. My dad was more outspoken on the side of, I'm going to do everything I can to protect my family. He didn't really care about stuff that much anyway. But having that conversation with you over the pantry, and I'm like, man, he's expressing genuine value over the person that could be robbing him right now.
Yeah.
That was wild for me. So how important is someone else's life? And if you can't really answer that question, if, as Max said, if your heart doesn't break at the thought of, I might have to actually pull this trigger. If your heart doesn't break there, you should pause before
100%.
before carrying a weapon.
100%. Lethal force is forever.
Yeah.
Cannot bring it. You cannot bring a bullet back. You can't recall it. It's forever.
Yeah.
And you should never be cavalier about that.
Yeah.
Can I also say, I'll answer that second question too, but I think sometimes we underplay, if you do have to pull that trigger, the type of psychological trauma that you will carry, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of if it's your first time doing it, you're not a serial killer or any crazy kind of thing, but a normal person, whether or not you did it for the right reasons, it's still a weight that you're going to have to carry, that you took someone's life. That's not going to be, gone in an instant. So it's just a responsibility that I don't think that we take seriously enough sometimes. My only little piece that I feel like I didn't maybe say as clearly is, when I speak to the two of you, like, it's very evident and clear to me kind of the things that you were saying of, like, I know that you value human life more because I see you on a day-to-day. I see the things that you spend your time talking about and thinking about. And so for me, like, I feel comfortable knowing, okay, yes, they have guns, they use them, blah, blah, all this thing. But as a Christian, if I know that you're Christian and the record I'm hearing play over and over, louder than anything else, is about you and your right to guns, whether that's your social media page, whether that's a conversation I'm having with you, whether it's an interview on whatever, and that's the loudest thing I'm hearing, and I'm not hearing the gospel at all, I'm not seeing the heart for people at all, then you have an idol on your hands, and that is going to have to be dealt with.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a fair statement.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on here, having this conversation. Mike.
Thanks for inviting me in.
Oh, yeah. It won't be your last time. And, of course, you already know. You'll be back. And I want to thank all of you out there for jumping in with us, for having this conversation. Max, if they want to find us, where can they find us?
Well, if you have questions, you can always email between Sundays at newlife.live, but we're on literally everything you can think of. TikTok, Instagram, Lemonade, Threads, all of that, Between Sundays podcast. And we've been getting some really good feedback and ideas for shows, which we're going to be incorporating soon. So if you have ideas, make sure to send us that today.
Also, be patient. Know that we're planning episodes and whatnot. So if you send us something, you might not see it for, a couple of months before we record it and get it all out there and whatnot. But feel free to like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. We just reached a little over 100 followers on Instagram.
I think we're like
about a month ago.
Yeah, we're on 150.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, really side note here, but TikTok is actually where it's
Booming?
at. I feel like I want to leave Instagram and just focus on TikTok because that's where all the engagement is these days.
All right, y'all hear that on Instagram? Y'all got to do better.
Yeah.
All right, do better.
Yeah.
Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Look, we say this every single time. We started the conversation here. Please go continue the conversations, talk to each other. The whole point of this podcast is we just want to have conversation, right? Yes, we talk about the Word of God. We talk about these controversial things, but the point is for everyone to start having conversations. So do that. And until next time, we love you guys.
Living